All right. Start our second session this afternoon. You heard this morning about all the plans to transform your communities and rob your property and rip your whole communities apart in the name of sustainable development and smart growth. The question has been asked many times how the people who are perpetrating these things expect to do this and make it last when you have a nation of people who were raised and educated on individual rights and the Constitution and so forth. The answer to that is that you steal a generation of children and you indoctrinate them so that they accept these ideas and they become global citizens in the coming global village. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about here this afternoon. Michael Chapman is an educational researcher and an author. He is also a member of the board of the Maple River Education Coalition and founder of the American Heritage Research. Through research and study, the Maple River Coalition is finding a direct link between the restructuring of our schools through federal programs like Goals 2000 and School to Work, and the restructuring of our communities through sustainable development. Michael Chapman and his group have discovered that today, as revealed in the national curriculum standards, education is no longer about preparing our children to maintain true liberty in a sovereign America. Instead, it is about indoctrinating our children to accept citizenship in a future global village. Today, Michael Chapman comes to us from Minnesota to reveal how the so-called standards movement masks the true agenda to a radically transformed America. Please welcome Michael Chapman.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you all for sitting in this long. It's been a long day, and you've heard some great speakers. You know, I couldn't help but sitting back in the back of the room listening to Michael Shaw and Michael Kaufman and some of the local folks. I was back there just rapidly adding stuff to my presentation, trying to figure out what can I take out now to make room for it. So I'm really going to move fast. I'm very graphically intense on my presentation, so you'll want to be somewhere where you can see this board. I want you to know that we in Minnesota consider ourselves members of the People's Republic of Minnesota. And for Michael Shaw's benefit, of course, that's the Midwest version of the left coast. But realistically, Minnesota was the very first state in the nation, in fact, the only state in the nation to sign the Declaration of World Citizenship back in 1971. Now, this was the same year that the EPA was instituted. And by the way, the gentleman who was the first head of the EPA was a man named William Ruckelshaus, who was the American ambassador to the World Commission on Environment and Development. So there's a lot of dots being connected through these things, and I'm going to connect the education dot for you. Now, I just want to go on to say that the state of Minnesota actually, as declared in this document, actually flew the UN flag over the state capitol building. Now, the citizens went ape. Here's actually a newspaper article showing that flag. The citizens went ape, so it wasn't too surprising that a year later we came out with the first environmental education plan. This is it. Now, one of the speakers I travel around the state speaking with is now a senator in Minnesota, so I got this document from her. I asked her if she could get a copy of it out of the archives at the Capitol, and sure enough, she did. She also sent me a copy of the original Declaration of World Citizenship that includes signatures. What you'll find out is from every single leader in politics in the state of Minnesota. Both House and Senate minority and majority leaders, our representatives, everyone. Hubert Humphrey signed this thing. Everybody signed this thing, thinking this was a wonderful thing. So it's not too surprising that the paper was all behind this and quoted George Bush, the country's new UN ambassador, said this: "It is President Nixon's deeply held conviction, which I share completely, that the whole UN system must be strengthened in the field of peace and security, social and economic development." Now keep in mind, before the term sustainable development was in vogue, that was a marketing term that cost the taxpayers millions of dollars to come up with in order to mask what this really is. This has been in our curriculum since then, and it's been nationally in our curriculum since 1994, every single classroom in America. In fact, I have challenged teachers as I travel around to say, show me any textbook, any subject, any grade, any page, and I will show you blatant propaganda meant to transform this nation. Lincoln once said, the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will become the philosophy of government in the next. We are reaping the consequences of having turned a generation of children over to this new system. It's not too surprising then that UNESCO, in their September 2003 conference on education for a sustainable future, came out and declared 2005 to 2015 the decade of education for sustainable development. You will be hearing this term everywhere you go from now on for the next 10 years. Education for sustainable development. And surprise, surprise, they named UNESCO the lead agency for that effort, who said their goal is to integrate sustainable development into all levels of education in order to promote education as a key agent for change. Now, what does that mean? If you go to the UNESCO's website on education for sustainable development, you will find out the new role of education. They state, Chapter 36 of Agenda 21 embraces all ways in which people learn about the world around them, develop the values and lifestyles, and assume their responsibilities as global citizens to prepare for the future. Now that's why I title my talk, Preparing Our Children for Global Citizenship. It is the right term, it is the right definition for the marketing word, sustainable development. And it encompasses more than just environment, as you've heard so far. They go on to say education is the primary agent of transformation towards sustainable development. At the U.S., at the cost to the taxpayers of quite a bit of a $400,000 grant, I believe it was, we have developed the toolkit for education for sustainable development. And I apologize, I covered up the slide with the box that shows the economy, the society, and the environment as the three parts of this system, as you saw, I think it was Michael Shaw in the three-circle graphic. It says, from the time sustainability was first, sustainable development was first endorsed at the UN General Assembly in '87, again, this document, the parallel concept of education to support sustainable development has been explored. That's a lie. It has been fully embedded in our curriculum in Minnesota since 1968. It's been fully embedded in the curriculum in the entire country since 1994. I'll show you how that works. But they go on to say that it will encompass the 40 chapters of Agenda 21. That is your federal national curriculum, the 40 chapters. Now, chapter 36 deals with education, but it is to encompass the principles contained in all 40 chapters. The toolbox goes on to tell you, by the way, this was written in July 2002, so it's fairly recent. Goes on to tell you that world citizenship is the goal. And world citizenship encompasses the constellation that is all the principles, values, attitudes, and behavior that the people of the world must embrace if sustainable development, i.e. global citizenship, is to be realized. Now, this is a bureaucratic revolution in education. The prime bureaucracy is the U.S. Department of Education, which was instituted in 1979 by President Jimmy Carter as a promise to put the principles of sustainable development in place before the term was coined. But this was the entire purpose of the U.S. Department of Education, now I believe the world's largest employer. Under its direction is the Office of Education Research and Improvement. They oversee the 10 regional education laboratories. You can go to their website and see these are the 10 regions of the U.S., and each region has a director and a directorate to be responsible for each piece. Now, it was the Mid-Continental Regional Education Laboratory, which recently changed their name, that was in charge of putting together the national curriculum. They called it the standards-based movement. This, for instance, is the social studies curriculum that states that it is clear that the dominant social,